A tanker can be gone, but still cost money. A loss can be real, but worth zero. A rescue can make money even when nothing is rescued, and the final payer may have never seen the ship. So let's say the tanker is yours. For this exercise, call it a $128 million VLCC carrying about 2 million barrels of crude. One morning, something goes badly wrong. The ship is lost. Some of the cargo is in the water. You want a number. That turns out to be the first problem. You would think the size of the spill decides the size of the bill. In 1979, Atlantic Empress spilled roughly 287,000 tons of oil in the Caribbean, one of the largest tanker spills ever recorded. Much of that oil stayed offshore, so the shoreline impact was limited compared with the sheer volume released. 25 years later, Athos I spilled only a few thousand barrels into the Delaware River. That smaller spill interrupted shipping, delayed more than 200 vessels, and forced 2 reactors at the Salem nuclear plant offline for 11 days. The estimated loss from that shutdown alone was about $33 million. Businesses later received more than $160 million in paid claims. So for your tanker, the dangerous number is not simply how much oil escaped, it is what the oil finds. A slick crossing empty water can be cheaper than a smaller one entering a crowded river full of expensive infrastructure. 2 identical holes in 2 identical tankers can produce completely different financial disasters. And now the oil reaches shore. This is where your cargo starts doing something strange. Before the accident, every barrel had a buyer. Once crude mixes with seawater and shoreline material, part of that same cargo becomes waste. Spill response guidance warns that cleanup can create many times more waste than the original quantity of oil released. You now pay people to remove material that yesterday people paid you to deliver. Moving and treating that waste becomes a business of its own. The oil has lost its value and started manufacturing invoices. One of those invoices may come from a company whose job is to save your ship. That sounds straightforward until your ship is no longer worth saving. Traditional marine salvage grew around a famous rule: no cure, no pay. A salver who recovered valuable property could earn a salvage award. A worthless wreck creates a problem. Why send tugs, crews, and expensive equipment toward a dead tanker if the valuable thing is no longer the tanker, but the pollution you are preventing? Marine insurance eventually built a way around that problem. Under the Scopic system, salvage contractors can be paid according to agreed tariff rates for people and equipment, with a 25% uplift, even when the traditional value of the property saved is too small to support the job. So yes, a rescue can make money even when very little is rescued. For you, that is useful. It is also another bill, and the ship can keep generating those bills long after it disappears from the surface. When Prestige sank in the Atlantic in 2002, thousands of tons of heavy fuel oil remained inside the wreck, more than 3 kilometers down. Spain later organized a deep water operation to remove it. The government initially put that operation at 109.2 million euros. The ship was already dead. The spending was not. Then the number changed. After other financing was taken into account, the claim fell to 24.2 million euros. The International Compensation Fund assessed about 9.5 million euros as admissible under its rules. 1 operation. 3 perfectly real numbers. That distinction matters to you now. You can spend real money and still be told that some of your loss does not legally count. And if that sounds strange, imagine the other side of the desk. In South Korea, after the Hebei Spirit spill in 2007, more than 120,000 claims entered the compensation process. People and businesses along the coast said the spill had cost them money. Tens of thousands of those claims were eventually rejected. A business can have a bad year after your spill and still fail to prove that your oil caused the loss. Records can be missing. Revenue may have fallen for another reason. A quarter claims office has to turn a messy real economy into a number that can legally be paid. That is how a real loss can become worth 0. At this point, you're probably wondering who built this system in the first place. For that, you have to leave modern tanker shipping entirely and go back to Victorian Britain. In the middle of the 19th century, ship owners were taking on new third-party liabilities. Groups of owners began pooling some of those liabilities among themselves. Those mutual clubs became the ancestors of modern protection and indemnity insurance, or P&I. Hull insurance deals mainly with the physical ship. P&I follows many of the liabilities the ship creates. So when your tanker goes down, the neat object you bought for $128 million breaks apart financially. The hull can have one insurer. The oil may belong to somebody else. Lost income may sit under separate cover. Pollution and wreck liabilities enter the P&I world. The logo on the cargo does not automatically tell you who writes the pollution check. There's another old maritime rule waiting in the paperwork. It is called general average. If an extraordinary sacrifice or expense is made to save the ship and cargo together, the surviving cargo interest can be required to contribute to that cost, which means your customer can get every barrel back and still receive a bill because those barrels were saved. A successful rescue can create a new creditor. Under the modern civil liability convention, much of the pollution liability from persistent oil is channeled toward the registered ship owner. That system was built after disasters exposed how badly international law handled giant spills. Torrey Canyon in 1967 helped trigger the legal work that produced the first civil liability convention 2 years later. It also means the law can recognize damage larger than the amount the ship owner is required to provide under that first layer, so the bill keeps moving. Your P&I club may carry the first layers of a major claim, but the biggest marine clubs pool large losses and buy huge amounts of reinsurance above them. Your tanker may sink in one country, while pieces of its financial risk are distributed through insurers and reinsurers around the world. The accident is local, the balance sheet travels, and eventually it can reach companies that had nothing to do with your ship. Above the ship owner layer sits an international compensation system funded by companies that receive large quantities of oil by sea in member states. A refinery or oil importer thousands of miles away can therefore help finance compensation for your accident simply because it participates in the same oil trade. This is where the final line of the opening becomes literal. The final payer may have never seen your ship, and the system can become stranger still because you do not actually need an oil spill to create an oil spill bill. Suppose your tanker grounds near the coast. The hull is damaged. 2 million barrels are still inside. Tugs arrive, the cargo is transferred, response crews are mobilized, aircraft watch the water for a slick that never appears. If the threat of pollution was grave and imminent, reasonable preventative measures can still fall inside the compensation system. The headline can say there was no major spill. Your accounts can say there was a major accident. Somebody also has to do all this work. A serious casualty can suddenly create months of business for salvage crews, pollution contractors, marine lawyers, and claims specialists. Large losses generate a specialized economy around preventing, measuring, and cleaning them. Your disaster can be somebody else's contract. Even cleanup has a point where spending more can stop making sense. Oil spill guidance uses a practical idea called net environmental benefit. Keep cleaning while the response is actually improving the outcome. At some point, aggressive cleanup can move more sediment, damage habitats, or cost heavily for very little additional recovery. So one of the strangest invoices in your accident may be the invoice somebody decides not to approve. Go back to your tanker. At the beginning, you wanted one number. The ship had a value. The cargo had a value. The arithmetic looked simple. Now the hull may already have been paid by one insurer while the wreck is still costing another. A coastal business can lose income and receive nothing because it cannot prove the link. A salver can be paid when the ship itself is worthless. An oil company thousands of miles away can help fund compensation for an accident it never touched, and the amount of oil you spilled still may not be the number that matters most. The tanker can disappear in a day. The difficult part is deciding where the loss finally stops.